Hi everybody, today's video is shaded spheres in watercolor. And I'm using a compass to draw my circle. If you make a mistake, that's what erasers are for. Let me get rid of that line. I'm going to use my ruler to create a horizon, or edge of the table in this case. I'm going to assign randomly the direction of my light source. So this is going to be where my highlight is. And the cast shadow is going to come out from the bottom of the sphere, being somewhat rounded. And I'm using a very hard lead so I can get rid of my pencil lines later. Actually want to use this to lighten them because they're just going to be guidelines for the paint, and I want them to be extremely light. All right, in watercolor, one always works backwards, using the lightest shade first. So I'm going to mix up what is mostly water and just the tiniest little bit of pigment. And I'm going to wet the entire area that I intend to shade. Just enough so that it's kind of shiny. You don't want it soaking wet, just so that you can see the shine of the water. And I'm going to use 147 blue. And I'm going to tint my water. I'm going to start here in the middle. I'm going to blend all the way down. And you can already see the paper starting to disintegrate. I'm going to have to take this slow and do it in stages. I'm going to grab my tissue or the sponge and wipe off my brush here. And then I'm just going to use the edge of the damp brush to blend. And if I lose that highlight, I'm going to dab with the tissue. You don't want to rub with the tissue. You're going to destroy the paper that way. But if you press, it'll suck up some of that pigment for you. Our highlight should be mostly the white of the paper. I'm going to wet this again. A little too much. And try to use that water to suck up the extra pigment. And now I have reached a bit of an impasse until this dries before I can put on the next layer. So I'm going to let that dry and I'll be right back. If you're in a bit of a hurry, a hair dryer is an excellent way to speed along drying of paint. When it's completely dry, it'll feel warm. If you feel any coolness on the paper, the paint is not yet dry. I'm going to add a little bit more pigment. Watercolor takes some patience. You've got to build things up slowly, layer by layer, to get the... And when shading a sphere, we want our lines to be circular. Any sort of flat across horizontal strokes are going to cause our sphere to look flat, like a coin as opposed to a ball. So I've got this hard edge that I now need to blend. I'm going to squeeze my brush and get it cleaned. And I'm just going to use the brush without any extra pigment, circular motion, to blend that up. And I want to reduce the appearance of any hard lines. Maybe add a little bit more in the center while it's still wet. Using that dabbing motion to reduce the amount of friction that's on the paper. I'm going to spread what's already here around. The more water you have on the paper, the less you need to rub to spread the paint around. The water carries the pigment. There's an awful lot of liquid here. That's where your tissue comes in for absorption. Now it's time to let that dry again, or in this case, hair dryer. Two of the biggest mistakes people often make when doing this exercise is too much friction on the paper and not enough water. So I'm going to mix up a fairly dark blue that I'm going to use in the core shadow. And that's probably all the pigment I need for this layer, but I do need to spread that a little bit with just the damp brush. I want to do it while it's still wet so it doesn't form any hard edges on me. Get some more water in here. I often joke that it's called watercolor for a reason. You always end up needing more water than you think you do. Better get that drop before it merges with the sphere. You can dab, which is going to help reduce the appearance of streaks and also save your paper from turning into goop. This is 90-pound mixed media paper, so it can't take quite as much punishment as 140-pound watercolor paper can. But if you're gentle with it, it'll do quite a lot for you. See, I'm getting a bit of a hard line up here, so I need to blend all the way to the edge. And I think I need to stop touching it right now, because if I keep going, I'm going to end up ruining it. So, it's hairdryer time again. So it's starting to look like the shadow is wrapping around the sphere the way I want it to. I do want a bit more pigment on here. And in order to get a decent looking shadow, sometimes you need to add a bit of the opposite. So I'm going to take some of the intensity out of my blue by adding just a teeny bit of orange. It's going to make it more of a navy blue. I'm going to do that around the darkest portions. I want this to curve up a little bit more. And I'm doing that dab thing again so I don't destroy the paper. Okay, and I don't want to stripe, so I got to work fast before the water dries on me. I'm going to spread around what's already here using just the brush with no extra pigment. I'm going to use that tissue to clean it off. My brush is leaking. There. I got to get this before it dries. Might need need to squeeze my brush to add a little bit more water. That dabby motion helps to avoid the streaks. I'm running out of water. Might need to refill the brush, but I'm kind of working against the clock here so I don't end up forming any hard lines. Maybe I can steal some of this. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Let that dry for a second. And I'm gonna go refill the brush. All right, brush refilled. Still a little wet. Hair dryer time. Okay, it's looking pretty good, but I want more of a dramatic shift between the values. So I'm gonna add more of my favorite 147 blue. So it's pretty heavily pigmented. I'm gonna add another touch of orange. Until it's a bit more neutral, more of a dark navy. I'm gonna layer that on. Watercolor always dries a little bit lighter than it looks when it's wet. And I wanna make sure that I'm not streaking across the page and not applying any pressure really on the paper, because that's gonna cause it to dissolve. And while this is wet, blend the edge in. I'm adding water in hopes of being able to absorb some of the pigment, because my highlight got a little dark. That's okay though. Make that core shadow a little darker. I don't want to overwork that. It's gonna get destroyed if I keep working at it. So, hairdryer time. Now it's time to get rolling on the cast shadow. Add some more blue pigment, a little bit of orange, more blue. So this cast shadow is going to be about as dark as it's going to get.